Welcome to our 47th episode of DEVCOM In The Lab, a production of the U.S. Army Futures Command's DEVCOM. I'm your host, Kyle Bond, and member of the Headquarters Commanders Action Group. Most of us take for granted that our GPS device or app will work when we go to use it, but we now know this is something soldiers can't assume when it comes to operating during engagement. GPS, aka positioning, is one element of what we call PNT, or Position, Navigation, and Timing. Specifically, the Army stood up a cross-functional team to establish assured PNT. We know peer and near peers have the ability to jam and constrain PNT, and that means we need to get solutions that ensure we have the edge if we were to face them. Today's episode will address that. I have three guests that I'm excited to have join us. This group shows you just how important partnerships are in the world we work in. Today's guests represent the cross-functional team, a DEVCOM center, and an organization that is part of ASALT's program executive offices. During this episode, we'll speak with Mr. Michael Caparelli, who is the chief of the Emerging Technologies branch in the Position, Navigation, and Timing division at DEVCOM's C5ISR Center. He's responsible for directing PNT mission technology programs in the area of applied research and advanced technology development, as well as providing customer support to Project Manager PNT. Mr. Caparelli is required to make decisions and recommend investments in navigation, sensor development, sensor fusion application, and integrity monitoring techniques to maximize Army PNT operational capabilities. We'll also speak with Mr. Christopher Jayas. He assumed the responsibilities of the product manager for position, navigation, and timing modernization in October as a part of the Program Executive Office for Intelligence, Electronic Warfare, and Sensors. Falling under his jurisdiction is operating the Open Innovation Lab, or OIL, a comprehensive open source space intended to bring together government, academia, and industry to find material solutions for military needs at a much faster rate. He's been with the Acquisition Corps since 2008 and entered the civilian service in 2004. But up first, we speak with Mr. Ben Pinks, who has served for 7.5 years as a U.S. Army as both a communication operator with the Signal Corps and as a Patriot crew member with the 43rd Air Defense Artillery Regiment. Mr. Pinks held positions of leadership within the Army and private industry. He recently transitioned from the PNT Space CFT, where he was the director of the Integration Directorate, and now serves as the Experimentation Director here at DEVCOM's Science Technology Integration Team. While with the CFT, Mr. Pinks led the creation of both the Position, Navigation, and Timing Assessment exercise, called PENTAX, and the Sensor to Shooter exercise in support of the Army's modernization campaign. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Pinks.
Thanks. So APNT Space CFT, what we contribute to the Army modernization is we have three signature efforts, obviously assured positioning, navigation, and timing, navigational warfare, and space. Each of those are directorates that are charged with integrating and supporting both the S&T community there at DEVCOM and bringing those technologies, not just from S&T at DEVCOM, but also from industry over into the programs of record like PM EW&C, which is electronic warfare and cyber, PM PNT, positioning, navigation, and timing, and other PM and PEOs like that.
At the beginning, I had mentioned PENTAX. Can you tell us a little, what exactly is PENTAX, and how is that being used to support Army modernization?
Thanks again. So it's an open air exercise where basically it's a GPS challenged environment. We bring out the best of what industry has to offer. We bring out all of our S&T capabilities that are currently in development and at the right TRL level, the technology readiness level, to WSMR, the White Sands Missile Range, and we employ those capabilities out in an open air environment where we challenge the GPS signal base, right? And that can be anything from jamming to other nefarious actions against the GPS signals, so that we can better assess the systems and the soldiers' reactions in those different environments, so that the S&T and industry partners and other DoD partners, to be fair, we have the Air Force and the Navy come out and participate as well, so that they can better characterize, again, their systems and the soldiers' reactions in those challenged environments. so that we can shape the dot mil PFP process and the future requirements.
So part with Pentax then definitely the the analyzed information is then used. It kind of goes back, you said, to be able to support the requirements. Is there a reason? Is this something specific to Wismar for that location, or is that kind of like a designated space that the Army uses, or is there something that makes that space unique?
So where we're at in Wismar, it's the north end of the White Sands Missile Range. So west of Fort Bliss, just east of Albuquerque. And so if you were to look at it from a top-down geographic perspective, it provides you a unique bowl, a geographic bowl that you can go into and turn on all your different signals to jam and apply nefarious effects against the GPS signal base and other GNSS signals as required. And what it helps us do is it helps us contain any of those nefarious signals that would have an effect on the FCC or FAA statutory regulations, right? So for instance, FCC, we end up having to do all our stuff from 11 at night, so 2300 through 0600 in the morning, because per the FCC, that's the national maintenance window. And as long as you're not kind of messing with the first responders signal base, we're okay with that. And we don't really get into that, but the first responders can and will use the GPS signals in support of their mission sets, as well as FAA, right? So airlines. From about 10, 11 o'clock at night till 5 in the morning, there's very little air traffic, and they're able to better reroute some of that air traffic around our area so that we can do the things we need to do at the scale we need to do it with the energy levels that are required, so that the DEVCOM, the ASALT, and other DoD partners in industry can get a very good look at the effects on their systems.
Thank you. So Pentax, can you tell us how it will be integrated with the upcoming Project Convergence 21 later this year?
Great question. So what Pentax provides Project Convergence is that unique environment to actually assess the capabilities that AFC is bringing out to the Project Convergence, right? And so Project Convergence is going to be executed across the Yuma Proving Ground and the White Sands Missile Range. The lead planning execution arm of that is the Joint Modernization Command. And so what we're going to be able to provide is there's a number of use cases and mission threads. I'll use one as an example, a leader follower, right? So you have a occupied vehicle with a number of other following vehicles that are going to end up helping do resupply out in the tactical edge, where you're going to experience those GPS nefarious signals, the jamming and other things. And so this will be an opportunity for us to assess those capabilities within those platforms to see how they actually operate and or react in those environments, because nothing says success like having your resupply follower vehicle just run off on its own, and now you don't know where it's at, and it just shows up in the wrong place to the wrong people. So that's what it really provides. Project Convergence is that look at what that GPS denied or challenged environment's going to be have the effect on our soldiers and platforms.
Thanks, Ben. What I want to do is I want to shift the conversation a little bit. We, as I introduced earlier, we have Mr. Mike Caparelli. Mike, talk to us a little about from your perspective the role of the PNT division within DEVCOM.
Thanks, Kyle. Right, so the PNT division, so we're in DEVCOM, and so DEVCOM's role here is to focus on applied research, or basic research and applied research. So anywhere from 6.2 to 6.3 funded research. We sit in the technology readiness level of anywhere from about 2 to 3 to about 6 or 7, really focusing on the 3 to the 6 range. And then in the beginning, like I said, 2 to 3, we focus on that transition of technologies coming from DARPA or the Army Research Lab, ARL, or now the new Army Applications Lab, AAL. So working on the 6.2 or the TRL 1.2 technologies, we help take those things. We do more additional basic research, do applied research, do some technology demonstration to get it to a TRL 6.7 range. And then we work with our PM transition partners to transition that technology over to them, so that way they have a path to get it out to the field to the warfighter.
Now, does the work that you guys transition go to a great variety of organizations, or are there like acquisition organizations that you guys are more closely aligned or partnered with?
Yeah, so we support any PM, program manager office, or PEO office that has a need for position navigation or timing technologies. So the PNT division within DevCom, we particularly focus on mounted and dismounted applications. So our transition partner that we work the most with is program manager PNT. That's all the product managers, MAPS, DAPS, so mounted assured PNT, dismounted, and then also the new PNT modernization group. But we do have some additional partners that we work with. We support the assured PNT CFT in test events. They mentioned Pentax, so we actually provide some logistical support for both testing, system setup, system integration, and then also data analysis on the back end.
Yeah, and we are going to talk to Chris J. A little bit later about the role that the Program Executive Office, IEWS, and the acquisition side. But let's take a step back again. Describe to me how the S&T community, the acquisition organizations, and as we've talked about, the cross-functional teams or CFTs are working together to modernize the Army and expedite the transition of the technology you've brought up. You've discussed how getting it, I guess, sooner we can get the best technology to the warfighter.
Sure. So as I said, we focus more on technology readiness level, TRL 3 to 6, and then we do our best to align ourselves to our transition partner. As we develop technology, mature it, demonstrate it, sometimes what you have happen is there's this traditional valley of death between S&T, science and technology, research and development, and then ultimately getting that technology out to the field. So my understanding and my perspective on how all this plays together between the S&T community, the acquisition community, and the CFT is that alignment of all the work that we're doing. So the stuff that we're working on, the basic research, the applied research that we're doing, we are more aligning to the roadmaps and the fielding and the sustainment plans that the PMs are working towards. And the cross-functional team is there to help us do that through alignment, through S&T and PM technology deep dives. And then, as Ben mentioned, the PNT assessment exercise, which gives us an opportunity actually to demonstrate our technologies in an operational environment and actually allow us to reach that technology readiness level 6, which is that mark where we start looking to transition that to an acquisition community.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And it works for a perfect transition right into Chris. Chris, talk to us a little about the organization you work for, and talk a little about the PDM PNT modernization office that was recently stood up.
Hey, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, so Mike did a really good job of just kind of talking about that transition, right? So from S&T over to products and ultimately delivering capability to the field and putting it in the hands of soldiers. So where my office comes in and recently stood up is that's our sole focus, right? Our sole focus is to accelerate that transition to the product offices from the S&T community, from industry, from academia, really with the idea of getting solutions and capability out to the soldier faster than before, right? And ensuring that we're properly aligned from a product office. So as these technologies arise, right, they have a home and they can fit into, particularly within our PM shop in either our mounted or our dismounted applications. Mike mentioned that valley of death. And that's where we, historically you see technologies never make it. So I think with that alignment, that's the goal, right? Is so that you have less products falling into the valley of death and they actually get to a home. The other piece of this is really being able to reprioritize, right? So as emerging technologies come out, we can quickly identify those and then pull those into the product lines and work with our partners to do that, right? So we're not into those traditional stovepipe, long, lengthy acquisition, 5 to 8 years, but now we can get into cycles of 18 months to 2 years of getting capability out to the field.
Another program that came up that I think is one of yours, you could talk a little about MAPS and DAP systems. They gather far more soldier touch points than ever before, but why is that important? And how do you do that? And I think that, talking about that, the valley of death and talking about transitioning, so much talk is about these soldier touch points. So I was hoping you could tell us about those two programs and the importance of those soldier touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. So the mounted and dismounted applications are essentially what you would think of, right? So mounted, think of it. I like to just liken it to GPS for your car, right? But we'd put those on platforms, right? So whether it's a Striker or Humvee, whatever it may be. And then the dismounted is the equivalent of our phones in our everyday lives to a soldier, right? So giving them a PNT capability that they can have, on their hands for dismounted applications. And as you can imagine, having soldier input into that early on really leads to early user adoption. And that's the whole idea of talking to soldiers early, incorporating feedback, understanding how they may use this technology, so that when in traditional times, right, you would wait until you got to your operational test, and that might be the first time you actually gave this to soldiers. Well, if that's the first time you're giving it to a soldier, all the capability is baked in. Any redesign is going to be a lot costlier. Whereas now you're taking almost concepts out to the soldiers, and you're getting feedback, right? So you might have either prototypes. In some cases, we've just taken concepts in terms of PowerPoint slides and said, hey, this is what we're thinking. How would you use this? And usually what you get back from that is, and it's a scientific kind of problem, is you get a lot of good opinion. And really where you got to figure out is, okay, what is the best answer to meet this large audience, right? So, you can't just go off of the opinion of one or two soldiers. So as Ben talked about Pentax, right? That's another ability for us to get soldier input. It's not always easy getting soldier input, and it's especially not easy getting soldier input in the actual threat environment, right? So when our initial kind of conversations with soldiers has been like, well, why do I need this, right? I haven't encountered a PNT denied environment to this point. I use a Garmin wristwatch and it's great. Well, when you take them out to an event like Pentax and you go, okay, what's your Garmin doing? And it's not working. And you show the device that, that we're procuring and we're working on next to it. And you say, how's that working? They go, that's great, but can you make it smaller? Can you make it, a little lighter? And now that gives our engineers, additional work to do early on in the process. Again, waiting until you've already, you've fully designed this thing and you're ready to go. So on our mounted and our dismounted products, we've really embraced that idea of soldier feedback very early. And then also if it's not a suggestion maybe that you can build into that initial capability, it's something that we can now build into the next increment. Or when we go out to industry and talk to them, we have some additional requirements that we can reach out and say, hey, this is the next thing we're looking for. So it not only helps on the current capability you're working on, but also future capabilities.
You're talking about the soldier touch points, and you bring up the great example. A lot of many of these soldiers, right, don't understand or haven't been in a GPS denied or restricted environment. I mean, and this question really is for any of the three folks on the call right now. Can you talk to us a little about why this focus on PNT might be warranted? Talk a little bit more about that. I think that's audience might be curious. Why now are we having this conversation?
Yeah, I guess I'll kick it off, and then Ben and Mike, you can jump in. I think it's just the reliance on GPS, right? So again, I'll just take it to our everyday lives. We use GPS for everything. Every time we step in our car, we don't even think about it, but it's with us, right? We go for a run, we turn it on, it tracks kind of where we're going. And I think within our weapon systems, it's the same thing. So there's this reliance on GPS that that for the most part, soldiers don't have to think about. It's just there. So now when we walk into a conflict and there is a degraded or a denied environment, all of a sudden things don't work the way that we thought they would or they've worked in the past. So we're really trying to get, not only, solve that initial problem, but then be at a point where we're outpacing the threat so that we have, multi-layered technologies. And it goes back to that it's an afterthought, right? It's just there. The soldier knows its location, has good timing sources. And I think that's why the focus on PNT right now.
So if I could jump in and kind of give Chris some supporting fires here with what he said. So the problem that I see is that we talk a lot about an anti-access area denial, A2AD bubble, right? We're going to have to fight in this bubble. And I liken that to telling a 5-year-old, hey, that stove is hot. there's no flame. It's an electric stove. It's hot, but you don't know until you touch it, right? And so today's generation's been fighting a war where we've had just absolute dominance over the indigenous people and the areas that we've gone into, right? Because of technology and the size of our force and things of that nature. So now we're not near peer, we're peer looking at the two adversaries that we have to go head to head with, right? And both of those adversaries can create the A2AD bubble. And if you look at an O plan, right, an operational plan for an Army formation in either Europe or China, right, in USER or USERPAC, what we're looking at is there's layers of A2AD. One of those layers is going to be GPS challenged environments, right? And so that's an easy one because of the level that the GPS power is coming down from space, right? And so Chris knows this, Mike knows this very well. It's easily jammed. So they're going to throw all the easy stuff at us and try and hold us at bay as long as they can as they bring up their munitions and try and get overmatch on us. The best way for us to not just establish overmatch, but maintain overmatch is to provide these systems that Mike is developing in the lab with the industry partners and internal DoD partners that he's transitioning over to Chris's program of records, the offices there in PMP&T and other PM shops, so that the soldiers, when they go in there, and I'll use one example, the 18th Airborne Corps is going to do a joint forcible entry into a part of USER. Where they're going to land, they're going to be less than 100 kilometers from a Russian force. They need those capabilities, so when they hit, they're fighting. They're not waiting hours to figure it out. They're fighting as they hit the ground. So I think that's the importance of the capabilities that both Mike and Chris and the APNT CFT space team, through its partnership, with the integration and some of the things that we bring to the fight, that's how we're getting these capabilities out to the soldiers. And I'll step off now and let Chris and Mike add to that.
No, I just kind of to echo that. I think that's why, when we started talking about process, and you see all these things that we're trying to do differently, at least within this CFT, not only with the alignment and things like that, but also, just trying different acquisition means, right? Trying, other transaction authorities, just so we can get prototypes in early. So we've been aggressive from that standpoint, not only from the acquisition standpoint, but also from the S&T standpoint of trying things differently than we have in the past. And I'll just, I'll throw in here, we stood up this open innovation lab, right? And as part of a partnership with the PM and DEVCOM and some of the other PEOs actually, and it's really that idea of getting industry in early, collaborating and assessing, just to make things move faster, right? So stop kind of the traditional processes that we followed up to this point and just try things new, right? Get things in quickly, assess quickly, and see if it works, right? And move on from that.
Yeah. So, hey, this is Mike Caprelli. So, yeah, Chris brings up a great point here with the Open Innovation Lab. Really, as he said, it's, that collaboration piece. So you got S&T, you've got the acquisition, and you got industry and academia, and all these people working the problem. But how do we all come together and work on this stuff together? We're driving after modular open systems approaches for P&T. We're driving after, in the innovation lab, how do you bring those component level, the algorithm level things together, integrating them together, trying them out against, being able to try them out in different form factors, swapping components out, and then ultimately taking those things out to, putting them up against a GPS simulator and in the lab threats, and then ultimately at the pentaxes that the CFT is working and Project Convergence, and putting them up against real world threats. Now you have that chain where you can start doing an integration on a component and quickly demonstrate capabilities both in a lab and then ultimately lead up to a field event. And then, realistically get soldier feedback at those field events, learn a little bit, come back, and you're rolling into this, DevOps cycle where you can continuously make improvements, you continuously refine your approach and your technologies. Ultimately, like Chris said, it's getting that technology out to the warfighter sooner, not waiting on a long development cycle, not trying to, hit the mark 5-10 years from now, but we're trying to hit that mark, sooner than that.
What is the biggest takeaway you'd like folks who are listening to the podcast to be able to pull away from each of your organizations and your role within supporting APNT and the PNT efforts here for the Army. And really no particular order, just, if any of you guys have a final thought.
Hey, this is Chris. Maybe I'll kick it off and then turn it over to Ben and Mike. But I think the big takeaway is, and Mike and Ben hit it, is alignment, right? So in the past, we've all done these things kind of in our own bubbles, right? And yeah, well, there's transition agreements and there's conversations that have been had. But the area that we're striving to get to, and we're not there yet, but we're doing better, is really pulling in all these efforts, right? That are powerful events, right? A thing like Pentax can be a really powerful event because it's not something that usually vendors have access to, and the Open Innovation Lab is not something that we've done in the past. But putting those together into kind of an overarching framework that allows all of us to kind of tackle the problem together is really, I think, the takeaway. And I think you see that just as we talk through this and we talk about kind of our own areas, but how much impact we have on each other. And so we continue to strive to have that alignment, from an organizational standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint and a capability standpoint.
Yeah, I think Chris really just stole my thought. Is my word was going to be synergy, and he used alignment, and realistically, that's what we're trying to get after, is that synergy between the S&T and the acquisition community. And I think the CFTs have really enabled that. One thing I always come away from is PNT is a unique community, and you see that a lot. If you go to a conference, you see the same people and you work with a lot of the same people, and especially in the Army is everyone focuses on PNT, but we all focus on a lot of times for an application. So where we at C5ISR Center, we're working on mounted and dismounted applications, we're supporting PNT. But there's other people in the Army working PNT problems for airborne platforms, for missile platforms. We all work together, and the CFTs kind of brought all those organizations together and helped us align and really share information and share what we're working on, so that way we can all work together and get that synergy together from the S&T community to the acquisition community, and then ultimately get this stuff out to the soldiers.
So I absolutely concur with both Chris and Mike there. So I think if I was getting off the stage and wanted to share what I believe the CFT has provided is, so when I first was approached by Mr. Nelson, the APNT CFT director, and was asked to come, work there at the APNT CFT. Cross-functional teams had it was a good news story and a bad news story, depending on who you spoke to across the Army, right? I think both Chris and Mike hit on a lot of the good news stories that the CFT has been able to help do what it was supposed to, right? What it was chartered to do, which is be cross-functional, bridge the gaps, bring people together, break down the barriers, all of those types of things. And then it's the focus, after I'd been in a couple briefings with Mr. Nelson and Lieutenant General Richardson, was, Lieutenant General Richardson's big on soldier touch points, right? And so what does Pentax do for both Chris and Mike, right? And as well as industry, is it gives that the right soldier touching the right equipment, right? Because a soldier touch point, and I'm not disparaging any soldiers here, but you take a cook and put an LRAS in their hand and ask them to, hey, tell me if this is going to work right. They don't have there's no functional knowledge of that piece of hardware. And what we provide at Pentax is that unique opportunity for Chris and Mike and the industry partners, because again, they have as much invested in this as the DoD, because of all their IRAD and what Chris and Mike are telling these companies, hey, this is where I think we need you to go to help us get there sooner. So I would just, like I said, my getting off the stage comment would be that I think all of the CFTs across the Army there, across AFC, have really done that thing that Lieutenant General Richardson and General Murray tasked us to do, which is be cross-functional, work within ourselves, the CFTs, as well as bringing your PEOs and those PM shops and your S&T partners together.
Well, I very much appreciate all of you three taking some time out this afternoon to meet with us here virtually to have this discussion. I think it's an important one, I think most people probably take for granted PNT assured, or be it GPS. We see it every day. I know it's one of those things, goodness, years ago when I started, and we go talk to soldiers and they would, it's in my phone. How come we can't be somewhere? The concept to most people wouldn't understand the challenges and that we might be potentially facing as a military going forward. So I love hearing the stories of the work that's being done to get the best capability into the soldiers' hands. That's why I said thank you guys very much for your time, and I look forward to watching and hearing more about the progress within PNT and hearing the results of the hopefully successes that come out of Pentax and Project Convergence later this year. If you enjoyed today's episode, please drop a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to ensure you receive notifications when we launch new episodes. For more current news on CCDC, follow us across our social media. This is Kyle Bond. Thanks for listening to CCDC in the Lab.